We have an expert as our speaker. Well, we are all familiar with these problems of water competition and water use conflicts as far as our water resource management issues in the country. And a very familiar situation is the case of Laguna de Bai here in Laguna and also near Metro Manila. Okay. Well, as far as I can recall, we have more than 20 agencies involved in the management of water resources. Okay, we'll be joined also by my co-host this morning, Dr. K. Abiso, Professor of Chemical Engineering and the newly appointed Dean of the College of Engineering at De La Salle University. Congratulations, Kay, on behalf of ASE and the audience here. Let me also welcome our PAASE members and also non-members who are joining us today. Okay. So, by the way, yours truly is Ino Lansigan. I'm Professor Emeritus at UP Los Baños and also member of the Board of Directors of PAASE. Okay. Okay. We're supposed to start now. And as I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of problems that we are been encountering as far as our management of resources, of water resources in the Philippines. And it has been proposed that a super body on water resources be established to supervise our water resource management towards optimal use and utilization, as well as conservation of this resource. Today, we have an expert who will talk about the continuing saga or the initiative to have a super body or agency on water. This promises to be a very interesting topic for today's discussion, as well as the forthcoming discussions or debate proposed for presidentiables. We have as our speaker today an expert, Dr. Guillermo Q. Tabios III, who is Professor Emeritus of Civil Engineering in UP Diliman. He is also an academician member of the National Academy of Science and Technology. So without much ado, may I introduce to you Dr. Glenn Tabios III as our speaker. Take it away, Glenn. You have the
Thank
floor.
you very much, Ino. Of course, Ino is my colleague way back in UPLB, where I finished my undergrad, as well as at Colorado State University when we were doing PhD. So let me share my screen and then make it full screen mode. Yeah. So the motivation of this talk was that when I was listening to Dr. Maricor Soriano's webinar last Friday, after her talk talking about how these old Spanish maps can be incorporated in land use planning, because it shows you where the rivers are, where the lakes, and so on. So at the end of her talk, people were asking, how could you possibly incorporate this into the city government, maybe ordinances or land use planning and so on. So I thought that perhaps well, that is a very good idea, but it takes time. It's like a protracted process of doing this thing. So so my title is it's on this legislation about water super body. But since I've been involved in this for the last 10 years, it's like a saga for me. So perhaps, and that's what I'm gonna talk about today. So again, I think you saw my abstract, which talks about, revisiting this ongoing effort, because it's still ongoing. So to create a national water agency to manage our country's water resources. And this is based on my experience as far as the creation of this agency. So again, I think at the end, I'm just gonna say like, can we wait? It has been mentioned by the two presidents, Aquino and then even President Duterte lately, talking. They mentioned in the SONA that we create this one of those several times. I think part of this LEDAC legislative priorities, but until now it didn't happen. So what I'm gonna go through, what I'm gonna talk about is to go through that process. So first of all, in 2011, I think July 1 was when Dondon Padaranga, Secretary Cayetano Padaranga was appointed as the Secretary General, the Director General of NEDA. So Secretary Dondon, who happens to be from Mindanao. And in fact, there's so many, there are like 11 brothers, I think. One of his brother was a classmate of mine in high school, so I knew him personally then. So he showed me this, there were like red covers of this one, but this one is in green, second edition. So this is the Philippine water supply sector map. So I'm familiar with this because I've been involved in the subcommittee on water resources in NEDA to craft this thing also. So being from the National Hydraulic Research Sector, we have been invited to be part of that big group trying to come up with this water supply sector map. So he asked me then, so what do you think we can do about this? So first of all, I was being honest to him. I said that, to me, it is a big wish list actually. But unfortunately, to implement it, nobody's in charge. So we need a champion to do this. So the champion is really, we need to create an apex body, because we already recognize way back then, even in this report, that there are so many institutions, water-related institutions in the Philippines with overlapping or fragmented functions. So we need an apex body to collaborate, to coordinate, to orchestrate all these different water bodies. But the idea is that the apex body will not, because we already have line agencies, so we just have to orchestrate all of this. Now, the reason why is because if you think about water, it has so many sources, so many uses. It has beneficial uses, of course, adverse negative uses. I mean, if you want to control floods and droughts, then that's the negative part of it. So it's like a complex, non-linear kind of a system to manage. So that's the unpredictable, uncertain, and so on. Now, one of the items that have been, if you look at this is in this Philippine water supply roadmap. The policy-making body, I mean, the governance structure of water resources, we look at it, I've always didn't like this because it's very sectoral. You do this sector, you do that sector, like water supply, irrigation. So it seems like separate, and I think that's part of the fragmentation. But we have been espousing in the last 20 years integrated water resource management. So how do you manage if you are so sectoral in your governance? So that's the idea behind, when I was talking to Secretary Dondon Padaranga, then, that's basically what I've been saying. So he said, well, you talk, I've got some, token money from ADB, why don't you do a policy study? So in 2011, September, me and I and Rory Villaluna came up with this policy brief. So basically, we start with highlighting the status and challenges of water management in the Philippines. Like we have quite a lot of water, but not quite available when and where needed. So I think that's a very, we have like, we always learned it in our class. Of course, we have also improved, sorry, but I keep on seeing this admit. Am I supposed to do the admission?
Hello, I'll do the admission, Dr. Tavius.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So that's why I keep on looking at my screen. And then you have, of course, the uh, access to, water supply, but more so sanitary facilities, pollution, etc. But one of the things, of course, being in the academy, of course, we always push for, lack of data, lack of scientific uh, decision support systems and so on. But the other issue is that we always talk about resource regulation, which I don't know to some extent, National Water Resource Board does that, but economic regulation is a bit vague as far as so. And definitely that leadership was who's going to be in charge. That's the leadership that we wanted because of the fragmented institution. So our recommendations, so that's 2 months after I talked to him, we talked to him, is to the formation to create a national water resource management agency. So that time it was like the idea is that water resources management, that's the key word there. Anyway, so guided by principles of good governance and IWRM, integrated water resource management, and then separately create a regulatory commission, Water Regulatory Commission, WRC, which had been introduced several years ago, actually, before 2011. So we still wanted this kind of a setup where we have like a DOE and the ERC, the Department of Energy, and then the Energy Regulatory Commission. So it's like DWR and then WRC. But since it's an apex body, it should not be a department because maybe the line agencies, Department of Public Works, Department of Environmental and Natural Resources, they might think that, well, are you going to usurp our functions and so on, which has been an issue even before when the National Water Resource Council was created, that the members are those line agencies, so they don't want even to give the budget. That's a long story, but anyway. So that's the idea behind it. So we call it an apex body, so it will be sort of an authority, just like NEDA. If we have Economic Development Authority, maybe you can have sort of a Water Resource Management Authority, and that's how it really ended up in the next phase. So I think you have seen this so many times, but one of the sort of inspiration, maybe to some extent, I would say, I have this friend, Aldwin Kamansi. He's, I think he's a lawyer now. He's a chemical engineering graduate from UP Diliman. So I met him way back then in the early 2000s, but there was a presentation he made in one of those water forum in Sofitel Hotel. So I saw this slide. So, but it's just a sort of a very graphical way of looking at the different agencies and how they come in. But then when you look at their functions, in terms of functions, all these agencies overlap. So I think that's one of the outputs in our 2011 policy brief that with Rory, and then I'll mention that 2012. Then of course Dr. Agnes Rolla had several papers. Even I was one of them here. 2012, 2015. Dr. Hall of UP Visayas, Rosalie, 2018 in the water policy in the Philippines, Springer book, and then my book lately I've also. But I've seen last March during the World Water Day, ASEC Eric Panto of NEDA presented this sort of fragmentation and so on. So I thought, oh, it's nice to also bring it up here. So this is an update, and you can look at the key NGA and GOCC's whatever So it's a little bit different categories as opposed to this one, but it also shows you. So if you look at this, it looks like some kind of a two-legged rhino. Maybe in our case, it's like the formation of the stars, something like that, or the galaxy. Anyway, so I just want to emphasize that the guiding principles of the water superbody then, number one, of course, is good water governance. For water security, so we're talking about, and then integrated water resource management. So that means you really have to look at all those different uses and, irrigation, water supply, flood management, and so on. And of course, I think some of this are, again, we repeated here, integrated and accurate data collection, the use of disease support system, and then, of course, including water hazards and so on. So if you look at it from that point of view, in the Philippines, supposedly we always talk about IWRM, but the Philippines is archipelagic, humid tropic, and the Marikina River Basin, for example, you have like 600, 700 meters elevation, the Sierra Madre, and in 30 kilometers, you have already the ocean. So I think that's true for even the Agno River Basin, Cagayan de Oro, Davao River Basin, Iloilo. You cannot, and even Cagayan Valley, our Cagayan River Basin, the biggest river basin, 27,000 square kilometers, you still have a coastal part, which is, you cannot ignore integrating water resources and coastal management. But anyway, that's the idea. And then, of course, this I've been always showing this. So this is how I translate how the decision support system comes in as far as linking science, policy, and management decisions. So in October 2011, sorry, this should have been, this should have been, it's October 2011, after that policy paper, President Aquino issued this EO number 62, creating an interagency committee on water, which was headed by then Secretary Singson of DPWH, with NEDA, DBM, the LG, Office of the President, DN, and so on. So one of the items there is it says it mandated to commission a follow-up study on developing the implementation and operational plan for this water body. So during the time, we had like arguing with the DPM, what should be named, authority, office, or and so on. But anyway, we ended up with the office during the time. But anyway, so when we finished this, that was September of June of 2012. So like a year after. So this is like a 157-page document with all the details of creating the department, and we include as part of the legal instrument is concerned. So the strategy is that the Office of the President will issue an EO to reconstitute, elevate, and strengthen the current National Water Resource Board. So that's why it was called the National Water Management Office then. So it's like LPO or something like that. I think we said that the OP can create an office by just an EO. But if you wanted to create an authority, you have to legislate that in Congress. So since that legislation process is a long process, so in parallel, while we are doing the EO, we will already try to craft the legislation, then hopefully get to Congress, do some roadshow and see what happens. So this is a NWRMA is an authority, and then with the Water Regulatory Commission. So if you look at we were quite fast with Rory, Miss Rory Villaluna. Unfortunately, she passed away way back then, 5 years ago or so. So we had a series of consultation, workshops, road shows, so to speak. So we have like this legislative consultation with Congress. I think there were like about 20 of them. During the time, I think the Speaker of the House was Congressman Nograles, and then Senate, the Speaker of the House. I remember there was Senator Angara, Indrile, Drilon, and several others, but I forgot who's the Speaker of the House during the time. And then, of course, we had a briefing with some cabinet members when there was one of those Infracom meetings where, it's chaired by Secretary Singson, but co-chaired by NEDA and so on. So, and then we have regional consultations. We had like a series of consultations from Apadi to Zulu. No, not exactly, but from Baguio. We started in Tagaytay, that's sort of kick-off there, 2 days. Went to Baguio, Davao, Cebu, and then we have one Metro Manila. And then we have also thematic consultations. This in Gateway, the one in Cubao. And then we have some in NEDA and so on. So that's like a 2-day, 3-day thing affair. So that's, trying to sell and then do consultation to be able to come up with this report. So all of those comments and suggestions are even contained in our report, but in a nice, organized way already. So this was the EO then, as well as the proposed legislation. That's June 2012. It was part of this report. The EO, the draft of the EO, and then the legislation. So this is where we always say Water Resource Management Authority legislation. So it's basically, again, talking about reconstituting, strengthening the NWRB, as well as to create the Water Resource Management Authority, as well as the Regulatory Commission. But during the time we say Water and Sanitation Regulatory Commission. So you can, anyway, so what's the subtle difference between the two? If you look at the current water governance structure, it's sectoral, as I mentioned. So this is the same that you have been seeing, maybe several that they have been talking about. What we wanted to do, and in fact, this is in our report, is to create a structure that is functional rather than sectoral. Because how do you integrate water resource management or integrated water and resource coastal if you have a sectoral structure? So you have to be like functional in terms of policy and planning, in terms of data collection, scientific study, regulatory functions, etc. And then each of those different uses or sectors come in those functions. So maybe that's arguable, but anyway, that's how we envision it. So this is the proposed governance structure. Of course, we have much more detail as far as the governing board, executive, the institutional arrangements, and then the organizational structure. Again, you can see that functional flavor in the organizational structure of the National Water Resource Management Authority. Anyway, so one of the things that I've been always part of the selling point is that when we did the budgeting, we ended up like we need 1 billion pesos, about $20 million a year. But initially to establish our regional centers, we need to have offices and all those things. So we need 1 billion more. If you think about it, one of the things that, to be able to get more budget, they say you create another agency. And that's perhaps, aside from having an apex body, you create an agency so you get more money to be able to do things. Now, during the time, 2012, circa 2012, the NWRB, which manages 250,000 square kilometers area of the Philippines, which serves 90 million people during the time, has only 92 employees. I think 92 plus, but anyway, with an annual budget of 100 million pesos. That's about $2 million. Now, I've worked in two big water districts in the US for, when I was there. Santa Clara Valley Water District, for example. This is in the Silicon Valley. It covers this Palo Alto and so on, all the way to Gilroy. It's about 3,370 square kilometers. So much smaller than this. Serves only 2 million people. But look at the budget for the district, 290 million and 800 employees. Of course, the water districts there, they cover from conservation watershed all the way to coastal, because the Silicon Valley or the Santa Clara has downstream of this is the San Francisco Bay, the South San Francisco Bay. So, of course, they also covered that wetlands and so on. But I've also worked in South Florida Water Management District to do a river restoration of the Kissimmee River in 1987, 89. And if you look at this, I don't know, the total budget is about $1 billion actually, but look at they have a modeling group with 20 people. I know a lot of them because a few of them graduated from Colorado State University. Dr. Ayanta Obesiquera, Ino knows him, Ayanta Obesiquera, and even Jorge Restrepo, Ino, he also works there. The budget for the 20 people or 20-person modeling and scientific support group, $16 million. Can you imagine that? Even bigger than our 2 million at NWRD. So I thought that, where is our sense of proportion here? But anyway, so of course there were earlier. In 2011, during the time when we were doing the study, there were already some House bills or Senate bills on water legislations. So a few of them here, that's the WRC I'm talking about, several WRC, and then you also have the House, the lower house bills similar to that by these different congressmen, congresswomen, and so on. So I just to show you that definitely there were already some, but no apex body legislation, by the way. So just to make the story short, so of course it was so difficult to do the legislation. We have the draft, but difficult to, we have some congressmen, Congress people and Senate that they want to push this and so on, but it was a long shot in 2013, 14, 15, of course. But the EO, that's what we have been sort of really trying to push to happen. So even the last few months of President Noynoy Aquino, we have been like going around and trying to perfect the EO. So you have comments from here, from Executive Secretary Ochoa, and all those memo coming back and forth, and then he was replaced by Secretary Almendras. This was already in March 2016, but of course it did not happen. And then let me just look at some of the sort of developments in between. So starting when President Duterte came in, Secretary Pernia, the Director General of NEDA, started looking back at those, issuances. The effort to create a water resource body. So in 2017, I think it was, I got invited several times, of course, I've been always in the meetings, to first of all, adopt or craft this national water resource policy. So it is again, oh, this and that, you, and one of at the end of this, like create an apex body again and so on. But one of the things that I've been pushing, and that was in this water resource policy, is to adopt integrated water resources and coastal management. Because the IWRM was really developing in Europe, or those were inland watersheds. So in our case, we really have to think in terms of integrating water resources and coastal management. That's the idea. So I was happy that this was finally in this. But anyway, again, this EO was sort of revisited. Maybe we can still do an EO. So this is one of them in March 2019 finally. And then of course, a bill to create a Department of Water Resources. So the name has changed. And then of course, still create the Water Regulatory Commission. So finally this is March 2019. But at the same time, even before Congress, in the first session in 2016, I got already invited in technical working group to again revive those legislations. So there were several of them that I've been to Congress, but Senate we did not do anything. But I mean yet, but Congress started 2016, 17, and so on. So these where I wanted to make a story. Oh, by the way, the proposed Department of Water has a little bit different organizational structure. And then this how, what will be the, what agencies goes to become subsumed in the DWR, what becomes function, I mean, transfers functions, or it becomes an attached agency, in contrast to what we have here. It's a little bit similar, but you know, I just want to show that. Again, this was presented by ASEC Eric Pantogneda during the World Water Day last March. So if you look at the organizational structure, there's a little bit of a semi-sectoral flavor again, which is, I don't know, I was talking to Dr. Agnes Rolla about it. She made some comments, but anyway. So that's the Department of Waters. But the interesting part about this one, and that's how Congress and Senate makes bills. You know, way back in 2016, 2017, each congressman, for example, these are the House bills, they have this bill, an act doing this, rationalizing that, and so on and so on. And then at the end of the day, you have to, since each one of them, I mean, admittedly, to be honest, there are parts that they overlap, sort of pick up here, put it there, pick up there, and so on. So, but you have so many personalities then. And then the challenge to technical working group, like I've been involved in that, is to consolidate all of this. So you end up with, so I don't want to put here all the different bills, but it ended up that you come up with a consolidated bill, and this version is October 2019. You look at this, there are 39 authors. But if you read all of this, there are 32 names, because Congressman Joey Salceda's name was written twice, here and then there. But there are only 32 people, I mean, 31 authors, but that's the sort of the, you consolidate all of this, but anyway, it's not difficult. All of them look similar. I mean, that's how they, I think, how they operate. And the interesting part is that in July 2019, so right before this was consolidated, finally, in fact, I have comments here and there still. This is a comment that I made actually, but anyway. So the Senate invited me again if they sent me all these 8 separate bills. So if I could help craft, I mean, consolidate, make a comment if, how these different bills look like. So in fact, this was my comment. I sent it December 2019, and then we had a meeting. we had a meeting in Senate December, and then February, and then March. But unfortunately, after that, you already had the pandemic, so we didn't meet anymore. But look at the different personalities here. Trilon, Recto, Senators Trilon, Recto, Poe, Revilla, Lito Lapid, Pacquiao, Tolentino, and Bato de la Rosa. So all of these senators has one way or another had this bill, Senate bill, to do this, to do that, but all leading to, of course, the Department of Water or the Water Resources Management, Water Regulatory Commission. So last May 21, this is confidential, but I think it's okay to show just this first part. So they sent me a copy of this again to make comments and so on. So this is the May 2021, just a few months ago, version, which is already a consolidation of those 8 senators' Senate bills. So basically, from 2011 to 2021, that's almost a decade ago. So I finished my slide with, I guess we just wait. And that's DD Vladimir and Gogo Estragon actually, of waiting for Godot. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tabios, for your informative presentation and for sharing your experience in this saga of putting up an apex body. I hope it's not frustrating on your part because you have spent a lot of time and energy on this initiative. Okay, well, there will come a day wherein your dream will come true. Always
Maybe.
wait for that. Okay. So,
by the way, just before you finish, there are 2 senators, Senator Bato de la Rosa and Manny Pacquiao, authors of those. Maybe if one of them become one, maybe it will happen.
okay, we'll wish for that. Okay, the floor is now open for questions or some clarifications from Dr. Tabios. Please, you may raise your questions either via chat or you can raise your hand to be recognized and you can speak up. Okay, first is Dr. Joel Coelho. Go ahead, Joel.
Yeah, thank you. Glenn, thank you for your talk, and thanks for all the efforts that you have expended in, proposing this to the Congress and working with them very closely to make this happen. I completely agree. It's very important so that there is efficiency in governance, in planning, as well as implementation of all of these water policies in a holistic and integrated manner. My question is, I know that you pointed out that you looked at the cases in Florida as well as in Santa Clara Valley, but have you ever considered the cases in terms of how they have their organizational structure in neighboring ASEAN countries? That's one. And then second is, I suppose that the bill is advancing in the Philippine Congress or the Senate, right? So are there still points of contention or disagreement among the senators? And can you tell us what those are, if there are?
Yeah, I think the House bill, I'll start with your last. I think as far as the House bill and the Senate bills, I think they are sort of already at some matured level of the document or the legislation. But again, we'll have an election, so they have to refile that again next year.
Okay.
So that's what happened in the past actually. You have this bill, we consolidate. In fact, in the beginning in 2015, as early as 2015, there was a consolidated bill from 7 congressmen in Congress, House bills, but not in the Senate. Senate has always been like only Water Regulatory Commission. So I think Senate will not act until you have one sort of I would say matured bill I mean, this goes through
Yeah.
from infancy all the way to the
Like
development.
a reconciled one, a consolidated one.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I call it
Mhm.
consolidation. So they already have, but because Congress then has to finish that that year, then they go to the next year, and then it keeps on going with that. Now, as far as Asia and the region is concerned, in the I've been I've been a chairperson as well as I've been the country representative to the UNESCO IHP, International Hydrology Program, Asia Pacific region. So I'm very familiar also with the way how people do things. In fact, way back in 2007, I had some paper with several of these people from. We look at flood warning systems in Japan, Malaysia, Indonesia, and then Kuala Lumpur. So I was able to see how they do things. Like for example, but I would say the most uh, aside from, excluding Australia or Japan or
Mhm.
Korea, I think Malaysia is the most developed as far as really they have in their case they have the Department of Water and then with irrigation and drainage in one.
Okay.
So they really do integrated water. And then if you look at their situation, it's very much similar to us. It's not quite as
Yeah.
many islands as us. So we can learn from them a lot, and they put in a lot
Yes.
of money actually. If you look at
Yeah.
they have all these Eutrophic Hydrology Center and so on. They have UNESCO centers. Now Indonesia is much more closer, supposedly, as far as being archipelagic and so many islands to deal with. And as far as water management is concerned, but it's not. Maybe we have a little bit of a similar
Yeah.
what is a mindset.
Okay. So Glenn, one last question. So did you consider the case of Malaysia, the case of Indonesia, perhaps, in terms of formulating what you were proposing to the Congress and the Senate?
That's the. If you look at it, our water code, which is developed which was crafted in 1975 and became a water code. A lot of these countries actually sort of really pattern a lot of their water codes uh, from our country. Now, when I say water code is like this, during that time, it was already one of the principles is integrated water resource management. In fact, if you look at the water code, it is conservation of watersheds, uh, water supply development, control of waters, environmental protection, and so on. And then they created the National Water Resource Council to be like that kind of an apex body. And then, unfortunately, if you look at the Water Resource Council, that's EO, I forgot now, because in fact, that's one of my rationale. Unfortunately, I did not put it in there. There were already legal, law or legal instruments that can easily push for a national water resource management authority in the country. Because we can just pick up those presidential decrees that created the water code, and the National Water Resource Council tries to do that already. But unfortunately, as I mentioned, the line agencies that are members of this or part of that didn't want to give their budget. In fact, the data collection outfit of DPWH, BRSG, Bureau of Research Services, was transferred to NWRC. There was another agency, I think, the data collection of this was transferred to that. So the NWRC was a nice model already during that time. Anyway, Malaysia, I've seen, even Taiwan, I've seen, even Indonesia tried to copy our model way back then. In fact, if you look at the IHP, Asia Pacific, it was established in the Philippines in 1993, time of Professor Angel Alejandrino, because they sort of, oh, they saw that, we're doing quite good in water resource management. So
Okay.
I hope, I
All
mean,
right.
it's
Okay,
quite
Thank you, Glenn.
interesting.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Tabios, Dr. Joel. Okay, I see the hand of Dr. Delia Senoro. Go ahead, Delia. Go ahead.
Good morning. Good morning, Doc
Hi
Glenn.
there, yeah. Hello.
Hi, and Doc Eno, good morning.
Good morning.
I really find time to watch your presentation, Sir Glenn, and I'm really concerned about how the process in the Philippines and your agony maybe to have this national body about water resources. And I think the issue is not about the creation, I don't think it is, the issue is not about the integration of the coastal water management and the water resource inland. And I think the issue is about how the process of putting up a national department.
Mhm.
So I saw your slides, which I really like, about how the US how the US put up a department and a budget,
Mhm.
which we don't have that kind of process, I think. So, and I truly believe that this national department is really very important in the Philippines. And having this agony and having this, many bills, what do you think is, or what do you think shall be done to make,
Mhm.
make this, this national water body become not to be there, and based on my exposure to some other countries, people who can give, shall we say, a significant contribution into to put up this kind of a department in a national level are those, most of them are scientists. But I saw that, those information that sending on your table, maybe not maybe most of them are not
Okay.
those experts in
So,
the
Yeah, yeah, like for example, in Vietnam, because I know also people in Vietnam, there's a Ministry of Water Resources in Vietnam. They created, I think, about 7 years ago. But if you think about it, like the sort of the parliament, there are members who are like from the academe and so on. And I think, like, I know Dr. Tran Thuc, for example, Tran Thuc, THUC. He was the minister. He was an academic, but he was pushing for that, and he became, one time he was in the parliament. So he was able to push it, something like that. So it's a little bit different structure. Now, Taiwan, for example, in fact, in 1990s, I was still in Berkeley during the time. One of those ministers in Taiwan asked for a copy of our water code. They didn't have yet a water code. That's the Taiwan. You can imagine, only in the 1990s. But of course, as I was saying, as far as budget is concerned, that's kind of a sort of miserable in the case, because like you can easily get 10 billion, 15 billion. Was that this intellectual, was it? Intelligence fund.
Intelligence fund.
Yeah. In our case, maybe 3 billion, 4 billion will really, propel our management of water resources. Thank you. I think
Okay.
Val.
Yeah, thank you. Val, go ahead. You're recognized. Dr. Val Reyes, go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, Professor Glenn,
Hello, hi Val, how are you?
wanted to honor you for your perseverance in pursuing this saga. I just wanted to dig down a little bit further on the reasons why, this has continued to, kind of drag from your perspective, uh, from your consultations with the different stakeholders, no? Those in the line agencies, the regions, or even the legislators. What is your sense of what what are the biggest barriers in their
It's a
mind
good question.
that, that are getting in the way? Are these political, socioeconomic considerations? Are these technical in the sense that this is a huge bear to hug, considering our geography? What are you hearing as as the primary reasons why a super body is difficult to implement?
Yeah, thank you, Val. That's actually, I mentioned about the creation of the National Water Resource Council in 1975. 1975. Yeah, because they had the National Water Resource Council, and then they also crafted the water code. But I think it's in parallel there. So during that time, if you look at the members of sort of that apex body, NWRC, you have the different agencies, DWH, DNR, and on and on. They were line agencies. They do the flood, for example, flood control. The DNR do the watershed conservation and so on. You have the water supply, etc., irrigation here, and so on. So they didn't want to relegate or surrender, if you want to put it, some of those functions that could be part of the national one. So there is a little bit of a turf issue, that's one of them. And of course, maybe it's not quite turf in a sense, but it's the budget. Because otherwise you have to put in all the budget. Those 200 people of BRS, for example, I don't know how much was just during the time. They were moved to NWRC. So if you look at it, I don't know how much is the impact of that. And then all of a sudden, now you're NWRB, job security, and so on. But even when we crafted this 2011 policy, but especially 2012 development implementation plan, we have to go through, when we went to consultation with the agencies, they always say, no, you cannot, we are doing this, you cannot get this, the authority cannot get this function and so on. So there is a little bit of that turfing, and I think the fragmentation has that sort of because of that attitude, then it's difficult to integrate for that matter. So, is that your question, Val? Did I answer your question?
Yeah, just curious. What?
Yeah, well, but of course, it's more than that. But that's, I think, the major ones. So difficult to have.
Okay, Glenn. Earlier in your presentation, you made a distinction between the sectoral organizational structure as well as versus the functional structure. Okay, I wonder whether the major stakeholders have actually imbibed that principles of integrated water resources management among the stakeholders involved here in this ecosystem. What can you say about that?
Yeah, I think as late as a few weeks ago, we have this through the Philippine Water Partnership, headed by now, the PWP is headed by Chris Ilagan, but we are meeting with ASIC Eric Panta, which, by the way, ASIC Eric is sort of one of the stalwarts in water as far as NEDA. Maybe, I don't know, he's not here, but I think it's okay with it if I say stalwart of water. But in any case, we are talking about, I think we have always been talking about integrated water resource management, but we are not able to do it properly yet. You know, I don't know, not able to do it properly yet. That's maybe redundancy, but the idea is that how do you really integrate from the point of view of from a technical, I mean, because I always think in terms of when you make decisions, especially this type of water systems, for example, water resource system, you go through this hierarchy, right? You must satisfy first the physical, technical constraints or elements, and then you go environmental, and then you go social, economic, or maybe economic first, then social, and political. But all of this, at the beginning, in the physical or technical, we already fail. Like, for example, you develop a big basin. So many stakeholders, they want to do this, they want to do that, but there will be benefits here, maybe there will be adverse impacts there. And how you try to reconcile all of those. Maybe you really need a lot of modeling and simulation, etc., coming from a scientific point of view.
Mhm.
And then you can transcend to environmental and on and on, all the way to political. But in our case, it's the other way around. The hierarchy is the reverse. The politics comes in first. Oh, I need these votes, or I want to allocate money here. And then you look at the social. People will say, oh, anyway, the people need this one and so on. Then you go to economic. Maybe we don't have money and so on. And then you go to environmental. Before you check, the physical premise is wrong. It's a wrong premise to begin with. So that's, I think, a problem with integrating minds before we can fully integrate water resources. And in fact, that's what I've been always talking about, transdisciplinarity, where each person has this collective mind. And then you can have a community collective mind. It's a combination of your aesthetic feelings, physical observations, your synthesis ability to really reflexive thinking. You have these narratives from your old, when I was young, like that. You have aesthetics and so on. All these different minds of one person and as a community.
Mhm.
You have to integrate that maybe.
Yeah.
Like for example, Kaliwa. Oh, it's environmental like that. But did you really check the premise that it's like this, like that? Maybe we're just talking like this at this level, but we haven't checked the lower hierarchy of, we haven't satisfied that yet. And I think we do that in optimization, right? First,
Okay. Yeah.
first delete the infeasible solutions, and then we start entertaining the one, and then try to zero in the optimal. In our case, we don't delete anything.
Okay.
So we have so many things, alternative solutions, but then, okay.
Okay. Any other questions for Dr. Tabios? If none, may I still be allowed to ask a question? Glenn, in the current state of play, as far as this particular Superbody, whom can you suggest or identify as possible champions that will continue on the saga, both in the
I think that,
community and also in the political community? Go ahead.
yeah, before I would say in Congress, there are several. I think Congressman Joey Saceda is trying to push at even the Department of Resilience or disaster resilience and so on. And I think he recognizes that. He's, I think, the chair of the House Committee in doing that. In the Senate before, a few that I was really pushing was Senator Angara, and then of course, but now we have Senator Manny Pacquiao, Senator Batul de la Rosa, and Senator Lito Lapid. I don't know to what extent they can still push all of this. I mean, I'm talking about, and I would say like in Senate, Senator Tolentino, I think he's quite keen on this because during in the meetings, I could see that it's quite. But the others, I don't know what will happen. You'll have an election, you'll have a change of guard, so to speak. So we can still push it, but it takes maybe some more pushing.
Okay, there is a plan to have a presidential debate face to face, and one of the topics to be asked is on climate change. So perhaps this issue of an apex body on water resources could also be included. What do you
Yes,
think?
that would be good. To again revisit and sort of put the fuel to continue this effort.
Okay. You mentioned earlier about $2 million needed to establish this authority. Has that been updated already? Because we've been very expensive as far as government funding is concerned. Is that still the updated one, or it's much higher than that?
To create it's 20 million. It's 1 billion. But I also said that 2 million is the NWRB budget in around 2012, which is 100 million. But anyway, I think the current bills talks about 2 billion. The Senate bill at the end, I think it talk about 2 billion, and the Congress and the House bill is also 2 billion. But definitely, if you do it proper, if you can do it better if you have bigger budget,
Yeah. Okay.
Because in fact, the way I design in that, if you look at it, our 2012 report, about 30% of the budget is going to be outsourced. I mean, work to be outsourced. And that's, in fact, in the US, I experienced that way back in the 80s, 90s. Agencies like even Santa Clara Valley, that's why I worked with Santa Clara Valley for about 5 years as a consultant. South Florida, because of the Kissimmee, we have been outsourced as from the university. So it's easy to demand from, if you outsource work, as well as you can easily fire someone if they don't perform, right? So why not as a part of, but I don't know how you can do that, but that's what we try to design, or that's what I've been trying to push. An agency like, let's say, Department of Water, $300 to $500 million a year, I mean pesos a year, will be to outsource to state universities and maybe some consulting firms to do this, do that, do computation for you, do studies for, do surveys for you, and all those things. So unlike now, NWRB, you wait for technical assistance, foreign technical assistance to do outside work, but why not do it in-house, or in-house, but then outsource some of the personnel to do it for you. So 30% is a good number. If you have 2 billion, 600 million, you're like DOST, but this one, you commission work to do this for your office.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Glenn. Any other questions do you have questions?
Sir, I have a question, sir.
I'll go ahead. Go ahead.
Alan.
Glenn, go ahead.
Good morning, Dr. Tavios. This is like a
Hello.
grassroots consumer concern. Last night, I was watching TV Patrol. There was an announcement that there will be an intermittent water outage from Manila Headwater in some parts of Metro Manila under their concession. And there are images of affected indigent inhabitants. Way back in the same network, I have also seen throngs of people lining up to get their water. And this situation lasted for 2 weeks or so. I am curious if there is a study linking water supply development in the economy and makes the case that investing in water management and sanitation services is absolutely essential for the eradication of poverty and for enabling sustained economic growth.
So I think that's one of the things that if you look at water studies to address this and that and so on. Even like, for example, the government doesn't really have that kind of outfit, you call it that way, that does this, and then really look at what's the effect of this in the short term or in the long term, and given that, or if there are adverse impacts or that there's a maybe need for developing this and that. We don't have that kind of an outfit in the government agencies that will do these kinds of studies for the maybe the private companies to invest on. And I think it's a whole gamut of things here and there, but I'm trying to simplify it. But the idea is that if you have a water body that does this, does studies, what happens, population growth is this, land use will change, climate change, and so on. Maybe we should take a look at what we can do now, or we should already plan, stage, sequence our water projects to be able to address this and that. And I don't think, like for example, Metro Manila, I'm quite familiar with Metro Manila. In fact, I talk about alternative sources in Metro Manila. Way back in 2005, 2005, we already have a paper with Dr. Cristina David of Philippine Institute of Development Studies then, she's economics, where the demand in Metro Manila is increasing, and by 2015, 2010, we need this, 2015. So that's why when President Aquino came in, commissioned a study to develop new water sources. The big one identified New Centennial Project. And I think we are now like, if there is a stone in a hill, already about to fall, and we're still not doing anything. We should already have developed, for example, Metro Manila, new water sources way back 10 years ago now. Why do we invest at the alanganin time already? When, if you really think about water security, you must build redundant system. You must build for water security, even beyond, you have to have buffer, because so the hydrology or the climate is so uncertain. That's what we learn in water resources. Even Dr. Lansigan does a lot of stochastic hydrology because of this uncertainty and so on and so on. So if we try to be resilient for that matter, we should look at, as far as the ability to already innovate, create or recreate ourselves, such that we have a very redundant, secured water resource system. But look what happened now. In the last 2-3 years, the frequency of getting low water supply or shortage during the months of February, March, April has been becoming more frequent. And even as far as risk is concerned, we have only, Metro Manila gets 85% of water from Angat. What happens if Angat fails? Angat, just for some reason, it's gone. You know what? That's not a diet. I want to mention about California, for example, I've done work in California. Southern California, when I was there in the 80s, the water demand is about, in terms of million acre feet, but maybe you have to confirm that, about 3 million acre feet a year. But their water supply coming from Shasta, about 1,800 miles upstream, Northern California, provides them a secured supply of about 2.5 MLD, million acre feet. And then they have supply from Arizona. They have pipeline all the way from Arizona. The Arizona State Project they have. And then they have one from Colorado to Grand Canyon, Hoover Dam. They can get water from. They have almost 7 MAF water available to them anytime, but their water demand is only 3 MAF, million acre feet. That's redundancy. That was way back in the 80s. In our case, we have the demand maybe 5,000 MLD, million liters per day. Our water supply is 5,000 MLD, just right there. So any small perturbation, low flow, right away, we have to ration. We have to, anyway, this is a long answer maybe to your question.
Okay, we still have some more time for questions, if you have any. Okay,
Sir, one more, sir. One more
go
question.
ahead, go ahead.
Correct me if I'm wrong, sir. Could I say that among the hindrances to effective water resources management in our country is the lack of good water governance, which has affected the quality of water legislation and institutions, and that the slow progress of IWRM implementation in our country is the result of unclear framework for implementing IWRM? Is the recommendation like an iterative approach to implementing IWRM that allows for adaptation and is tailored to solve specific water problems in our country?
Yeah, I think the other thing I always talk about transdisciplinary approach, where in this approach you have you have all the stakeholders, government, the civil society, the professionals, etc. When you talk about water management in our country, it's going to be like sort of a iterative. That's number one, because you cannot, you have to learn as you do it or do as you learn, something like that. And then as far as the problem identification, knowledge generation, solution of the solution configuration, I mean, development solutions, implementation, monitoring, and then you go back, you do a feedback. That's part of the approach. In our case, we have like, I don't know, the government makes all these plans, and then the locals, react. Maybe they don't like, but something it has to be done. But it should be like an iterative process, and then everyone is involved. And I think that's part of integrated water resource management or integrated water resources and coastal management, where you integrate people, not only the land and water, the upland and lowland, surface and groundwater, but even people. It's part of the pillars of IWRM, institutional role, the legal, the enabling environment, and the management instruments. So all of this, I think, we have those written in principle, but we have to implement or we have to do it.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Dr. Pibertan, you have the floor. Go ahead, please.
Hi, sir. Good morning. Not yet, doctor.
Hi,
Sir.
morning.
Sir, good morning. Yes, sir. I just like to comment. Maybe the government should really take this seriously and think this as an urgent thing, because as we know, we have these sectors, and the sectors have their different assignments, and if you can see, they are really fragmented, and all of them have this. They have these uses, different uses. But who decides which use would be prioritized? So there's no one who could decide. We have the NWRB, but it lacks power. So we really need this Superbody, so that with the different needs, uses, and of these stakeholders, there will be someone who would say that this should be the optimum arrangement or optimum uses or distribution. So without the Superbody, that would not be possible. So the government should really take this as an urgent need for the country. If not, the flooding and the lack of water for supply to the people could continue. And I hope, sir, you will not lose your passion to pushing this water body.
Okay, thank you very much, Fibor.
Okay, that's a good question. And anybody else would like to ask question? Okay. Okay, I have another question, Glenn. Okay.
Okay.
With all these issues and challenges and the incoming government, is there a need to re-strategize and to push this through? What do you think?
I think, like for example, in the last 10 years, I've been kind of lucky actually, or this is like to me connecting the dots. NEDA has been really one of the uh, sort of the champion in trying to create this department or this agency. And I mentioned to you Dr. Don Paderanga, who I knew personally. There's a UP Center for Integrative Development Studies where we were together for a few years, several years. And then Dr. Balisacan, RC Balisacan, who was also DG, in fact, he took over the 2012 report we have all the way up and so on. And then when Secretary Ernie Pernia came in, we are also, we know each other because we are, like he comes from Bohol. I'm one of the friends of Bohol, of the UP Advisory Council to the province of Bohol. So we tried to push that, but I think if you talk about legislation, it's really a little bit different level because you go to Senate or Congress, and unless they really will become immersed and be convinced and so on, maybe they'll try to push it. So we need a champion. Senator Angara, as I was saying before, he was trying to show that. In Congress, we have, Congress, we have also a few congressmen who were really, their chief of staff, for example, was talking to me, phone. I know some of them, they were like really trying to push hard, but it takes, well, it's not a village in Congress, but it takes, what's that, beyond a village kind of setting to do this, to make it happen.
Then I mentioned earlier, in the case of Laguna Lake or Laguna de Bai, there are a number of agencies actually involved. I think the latest count is more than 25 agencies looking at sectoral, sectoral goals, but none of them perhaps are following the principles of integrated water resource management.
Yeah, that's.
So can you say something about that?
Actually, I'm supposed to meet with some people later tonight. We have this Laguna book with Joey Comiso, Joey. But yeah, I would say that that's another case, like maybe different managers may not be able to really follow through the different works. And there are passionate people. They are retired already. This Lenny Bora, we know her personally, and she has been pushing this and that. She's already retired, but I don't know, it takes, again, even champions among them to really push, let's say IWRM. But the different players in Laguna Lake, of course, they have their own purposes and so on, but I don't know if LLDA can really because I've been experiencing Malabon, for example, the flooding in Malabon. It's a very simple case, but there were barangay kapitan or even Cagayan de Oro also. You have DPWH. They want that this barangay, this area, does not get flooded. But then if you put a structure here or there, then the other part becomes flooded. So all of this, they will say, oh, dapat mauna kami because we are flooded na, but then magreklamo isang barangay kapitan. No, if you do that, babaeng ka kasi pinapatakbo yung tubig sa diretso and so on. Hindi makakalabas. So how do you have this shared vision or consensus building? And in fact, that's what I was showing earlier. If you want to link science and policy and management decisions, you have the decision support system to show to you, to demonstrate to you what happens if you do this, what happens if you do that. On that basis, maybe we cannot do anything because you don't agree. We don't have a shared vision. We don't have a consensus. But hopefully the science will provide them a facility to come up with some consensus somehow. Otherwise, if you don't do that, it is just, I've seen that in planning and management. it's just based on perceptions. Oh, akala ko ganito, palagay ko ganyan. How do you make decisions in a very rational view? You don't have the science to demonstrate, right? So that I think Laguna LLD or Laguna Lake should be managed that way. In fact, if you look at San Francisco Bay, maybe you've seen there's a San Francisco Bay model in Sausalito, right? You can have like they have all kinds of physical model and mathematical model results in the screens. What happens if you do that and so on? If you pollute here, what's the effect on that side and things like that. So people learn, and then they get immersed, and then they will say, dapat gawin natin to, dapat ganyan gawin natin. All of these are maybe IEC, information, education, and communication. But on the other hand, you have to provide this. Those are major studies or major, simulations that you have to do, right?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, as you know, the local government units, executives, and people at the LGUs are given enormous power nowadays. And what do you think they could also be possible champions that we can develop to push through with this?
Yes, I believe so. I mean, they will be part of the whole process, but you have to provide them the scientific or this I was talking about the hierarchy, right? You have to have the physical, satisfy all the physical elements and constraints, and then you can transcend to environmental, economic or social, and then you go to political. So they can really be champions, but what will they champion if they just based on perceptions? Palagay ko ganito, palagay ko ganyan. I mean, that will not be sustainable from a sustainable point of view. It is not resilient from a resilience point of view. It is not going to be, it's not going to work.
Okay. Well, related to that, Glenn, while still waiting for some questions, okay, what would be your expectations from, since most of us are from the academic sector on towards this end of putting up the apex body? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, as I was saying, maybe the self-interest that 30% of the budget of the agency should be outsourced to, and in fact, part of the report is really to create water resource centers. Now, DOST is creating these niche centers, right? NICHE, I don't even know what exactly but one of them can be to create a water resource center. And they have done that. I'm involved now in Isabela. They have the Smart Water Infrastructure Management Center, where it's I'm hired through NRCP, but it's a DOST niche project. But imagine if you can do this. I think state universities can do a lot. As far as I graduated in Spanish like you. Way back in the 70s, we had already faculty or professors, Dr. Picardo, they were so involved in all this environment, right? And so on. Imagine if you really empower them, give money and so on. It's only SESAM during that time or PESAM during that time, maybe doing studies, but not enough. In the Pantabangan case, for example, they were there to ensure that the environmental protection is, assured and so on. But it's more than that nowadays, right? Because we're really looking at so many elements, so many dimensions, social, economic, political, as far as on top of your technical or physical dimension.
Okay. Since there's no more question, okay, I think
Filino, I'd like
go ahead,
to make a
I'm
comment
sorry, but
because
can I make a quick break? I've been holding just quickly. And I'll wait for you, Edsel, okay?
yeah. So you remember Glenn was a student when I was a student there. Pilino, we were together in the computing center at Los Baños.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and he was there every midnight. I was there every midnight when we were students, and I was taking your class then. So long time ago.
Oh, that is
Yeah, in Los Baños. Yeah. It was
year 77,
77,
graduated
78.
engineering
Yeah.
from UPLB during
Yeah,
that
yeah.
time. Yeah, about 78.
78. I think, yeah, 77, 78, 79.
Yeah,
I think,
but
yeah.
there was a big program then at the time on the basin approach to water resources research and training program.
Yes.
It was funded by Ford Foundation at the time. And the idea is to produce, the technical people. There are about 20 scholars who are trained under that program who got their MS. And then later on, there was another program that Glenn was mentioning about, the program on environmental science and management. And the idea there is to produce 7 or 8 PhDs who will form the core group of people on environmental science in UPLB.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So they
And,
all went to the
Aus-
US in the 70s, and after 3 or 4 or 5 years, they all went back to UPLB, and
And
they started.
you were one of them. Were you one of them?
Oh yeah, I was one of
Yes.
them.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
So the idea is to form, to train, have a core faculty with PhDs. The common denominator is environmental science. Oh, okay. So this issue of water resources raises another concern. Perhaps we should have more people also oriented,
Getting to that.
trained or oriented
Yeah.
on water resources. Yeah.
You know,
So hi, Excel.
hey,
You
Glenn,
wanna-
it's nice listening to you. Yeah.
Yeah,
We haven't seen each other since
it's been a long time. Yeah,
1970s. I was
yeah,
telling Pilino I was his student, and we were both in the computing center in
yes.
Los Baños.
Every day.
Every day, every night, somehow. Yeah.
Yes.
While I was listening to you, I was and you mentioned something about redundancy in planning. I think that that might be something that the Philippines really need to get into. Here in the US, there's always a very long range plan for certain things, like this net zero emission. There was a body in the National Academy of Sciences, and they created a report which is basically for 40-year period on what needs to be done every 10 years. And it's good planning, because things doesn't happen overnight. But if you have a plan that you could implement, then that is what is needed. What you're saying earlier is that sometimes that overall planning, cohesive planning is missing there. And maybe sometimes professors and other people could, like you, Pilino, could form a group and have this kind of high-level planning that the government could implement. And because the government needs that guidance from the scientists, the scholars, and those who know the field, and then to implement that. But I think that is something very important that needs to be done. And in the US, I noticed that they have these study groups consisting of professors and from different universities, and then they come up with a plan. And maybe that's something that you'll need to consider there.
Yeah. In fact, as far as legislation, I've noticed that you can be a congressional fellow, from the academy. You can stay in Washington or whatever for 6 months, and then just do this, do that as a congressional fellow from faculty. From universities. Do we have that kind of,
Do you have that there?
make a sabbatical, you do being a congressional fellow, and then you that make some, that's, thank you very much, Edson.
Yeah. That's actually one thing here in that. Like me, I'm kind of detailed to the National Science Foundation
Yeah.
for 2 or 3 years, and that's the whole idea that
Mhm.
government pays for things, and you get
Yes.
exposed to this. Maybe the Philippines ought to do that, or maybe you have such a program. That might be a good thing to do.
Congressional fellows we don't have. Maybe
You don't have.
like you mentioned by NSF, maybe like DOST can, maybe an item where you force to Congress that there is someone sitting there to give them advice here and there, even though you'll be ignored in the beginning, but maybe when you go to the
Yes.
coffee shop, you
Yep.
talk to this, they can pick it up, something like that.
Yeah, well, you're all doing
Like
good there,
instead of a
so-
lobby, is a
Lobbying, yeah.
lobbyist, it could be a congressional fellow. That's how I knew some congressional fellows before in the US, and that's how they really operate. They live in Washington, D.C., they kind of mingle with so they
Yeah.
sort of start talking even the coffee shops, and that's where ideas happen.
Yeah. Thank you. I enjoyed the
Okay,
talk. Yeah.
thank you, Edsel. Thank you, Edsel. Okay.
Thank you,
Glenn,
Felina.
you mentioned earlier the regional national water resources centers
Yes.
in setup. Okay, this is a good incentive for our state universities and colleges to participate in and be involved in these particular activities. Okay, so of course, other universities have already existing centers, like in San Carlos, for example, University
Yes,
of San
the
Carlos.
water
They
resource
already have a very
center.
powerful group there. Okay, and I think as a strategy, you don't start with so many centers, but maybe gradually you can put up resource centers in where you have the capacity already. Okay. And where you are encountering a lot of these serious problems of competing and conflicting water resources management issues. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're on the ground. They know much better than anyone else what's happening. Like, I guess that's same thing in, again, I always say in the USA. But Arizona, for example, groundwater is a big issue. California, water is moved from Northern California or even from Colorado. Even in Colorado, remember, Filino, the western slope of the Rocky Mountain is where the snow dumps and so on. And then on the other side is the Colorado Plains all the way to Nebraska are all dry, So they tunneled water from the western slope to the eastern slope. And there are like 18 big tunnels, to move water to the other side. So the definitely, again, as I was saying, if you budget from this agency 300 million a year to outsource to water resource centers, you give a state university 15 million a year, they will do so many things for you. So if you have 20 state universities doing that all over the country for 300 million on a sustained basis, then you have that. I don't know if you remember, if you recall, in Colorado, there was a Colorado Water Resource Institute. They just give money to Colorado professors, right? Every year you get $2,000, $3,000, each one of them in water, like Professor Salanso. Similarly, in California, they also, the California Water Resource Institute, they just give out money to state universities. Small, $3,000-$4,000 to do this, do that, and so on. But those little things can really, move a lot of mountains.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? If none, I think we need to close this session. Thank you very much, Dr. Tavios, for gracing
Yes.
our fireside chat. We learned a lot of things from you, and also from the experiences that you shared with us as far as pursuing this apex body on water resources. So we hope we can interact with you again in the near future on related topics, and maybe
Yes.
update us on what's going on. We know that there are a number of competing and conflicting issues regarding water resources. In fact, this weekend we'll be encountering a problem as far as distribution in Maynilad area. For about 3 days, there will be no or limited supply of water for the households. And you're pushing through with a Superbody, but I think what is more important first is to organize the different stakeholders responsible for forming this group. And we hope that we can identify these people to continuously be champions of your what you call this, your passion to put up this APEC body in the Philippines. So at this point, again, on behalf of PAASE, we'd like to thank Dr. Glenn Tabios III for gracing our fireside chat as speaker. Go ahead, Glenn.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you have the mic. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Philino. So hopefully, something will happen. We don't want we're just gonna be waiting for Godot. That's what I end. So looking forward, in the next few months, years, that will, after the next administration, when the next administration definitely will have a new one. So hopefully we can revive this effort.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Glenn Tabios III. We also would like to acknowledge our attendees for this morning's fireside chat, and also would like to recognize si Ma'am D.R. Ramirez pala na andyan, Ma'am, National Scientist Dolores Ramirez. Ma'am, good morning po. And also other members of the National Academy of Science and Technology, NAST, including our distinguished speaker. And of course, the members of PAASE and the prospective members of PAASE who will be selected before the end of this month. Welcome again to our next episode. We are doing this every Friday, so we still have to make the announcements later on. Marami pong salamat sa inyong pagdalo at magandang gabi, magandang umaga, kung saan man kayo naroroon. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat. Thank you.
Thanks, Ladino.
Thank you po.
Bye, Alvin. Alvin was texting.
That's Glenn, Lino.
Hi, Alvin.
Thank you, Academician Alvin. Maraming salamat.
Morning, Dr. Glenn from Ruji here, your former student at UP Diliman.